interdisciplinary collaboration and tackling of social justice issues in her creative process. So welcome, Gabriela. We're very lucky to have you, and I will give it over to you.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation. I think this is a fantastic initiative, you know, from this Charlotte Music Festival. So I feel very honored to be part of this. So I'm gonna talk about my work. So I prepare this, you know, key point presentation that I would like to share with you. Wait a minute. Share sound. Let me just open my. Okay. Let me just 1 minute. Are you seeing my presentation right now?
Not at the moment.
Okay, let me just. Stop. It says allow to Zoom to share your screen, open system presence. I have something in privacy. Let me just go really quickly. Okay, let's see if this works. Really. Ready. Are you seeing my presentation right now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. So I'm gonna start just playing a very, very little example of my work, and then I would like to ask you guys some questions about what you heard and what you think about what you heard. So I'm not going to tell you what you are gonna hear. That why is that moving? That's the music. Oh, sorry. Did I say something out? I'm sorry. I just put something. Sorry. Okay, so what you heard, it's a piece that it's called Delivé. This is the second movement of the piece. It's a piece for flute, percussion, and double bass. And the reason that I chose, this presentation, I started just playing this music, is because I think that this piece, in a way, it's a very good representation of what my aesthetic it's all about. Of course, I have different interests, and you will see during the time of this presentation that my music could be very different in certain ways. But there are certain things, certain characteristics that really define who I am. First of all, the rhythm. I mean, as you can see here, this is a piece, it's a very rhythmic piece. It says siempre rítmico. And rhythm is something that is going to be very important in my work. Perhaps because I'm a Latin American composer, and the way I think rhythm is, in a way, very different as in Europe, for example. And especially, I believe that especially the avant-garde post-Darmstadt, these musicians from Europe avoid in many ways the pulse, the way to feel a pulse. And for me, to feel the pulse is something very important. I think that some European composers think about rhythm in terms of durations, but not in terms of pulse. And for me, it's very important that my music has a pulse. So probably that would be one of the characteristics. The other thing is perhaps, this kind of an ethnic kind of feeling, especially in this movement, not in the whole piece, but especially in this movement. So my first question will be for you guys, if you think that everything in this piece is written, or there are some improvisations that you heard when you heard the music. I don't know if someone would like to answer that question. I mean, if you really think that everything has been written on the score, or there are a few exceptions in which the performance could improvise.
I definitely think it has some improvisatory influence, but it is hard to say. It's so clean how they're performing it. It seems like it's notated, but they could also be amazing performers. So it's hard to say.
Well, both, you're right. I mean, both things that you have said are right. Yeah, they're incredible performers. And the first part of the piece is not totally notated, but the second part has a little bit of improvisation. So I want to show you some of the score. So here it is. No, if you see, this is the beginning of the piece, so everything is written. No. But then, if you see this part where it says con jícamo, which actually this is This is a way for Latin Americans to say con jícamo. And that means that you have to put all your, flavor on it, or, I don't know the translation for con jícamo in English, but when you say con jícamo means that you need to get you need to put this kind of a Latin feel in what you're playing. And in that section, there are certain, rhythms that they are steady, but the rest you can improvise, no? It says improvise with a similar pattern alternated with silences until written bars, no? So you can really improvise. But, I like to play with that. I like to play with something that is defined and something that maybe is not defined, and you can play with it. And this is something that it's important for my music. I want to tell you a little bit about my story. My parents belong to this group. This group is called Los Folcloristas, and my parents were founders of this group. And the main goal for this group was to preserve the folk music from Latin America, not only from Mexico, but from Latin America. So I grew up listening music all over Latino, folk music, and that was a very important part of my education and me as because I start playing the guitars and I start playing the charango, which is a small instrument from Peru, and I start listening to this kind of music, and this is probably part of my DNA in my aesthetic and in the kind of music that I work with. So this is something that it's interesting, and I always have to address, because this is always a question for me. I'm a composer and I do contemporary music, but on the other hand, I was training, in the Mexican Conservatory and at the University in Mexico City. And of course, I learned all this, European tradition and of course the European avant-garde. And I have to say that, I did my doctorate and my master degree in England, in London, and the first in Guildhall School of Music and Drama, and then I did my doctorate at City University of London in electronics. And when I was there, I really realized that I never fit into those aesthetics. It was very difficult to me, and it took me a lot of time to understand that it was hard to belong to that kind of tradition. And I went to Darmstadt only once, and I remember that I had a piece played by a Mexican percussionist. It was a piece for steel drum and tape. And I remember seeing people laughing, really laughing about my music, because at that time, I don't know if that has changed, but at that time, the people in Darmstadt were people very narrow-minded. And they were people that really trying to avoid any triad, chord, or any tonal kind of music, or avoid the pulse, avoid the rhythm. And obviously I arrived with something that was completely different for them. And they considered that I was doing ethnic music. I was doing folk music and I was not doing contemporary music. And I feel very disappointed. I was really depressed after that trip. I spent like one month thinking about it and thinking, well, this is not where I am. And if I get rid of the rhythm and if I get rid of the things that I like and the things that really represent my way of thinking, is like, I'm going to cut my hand, or, it's not going to be part of me. But it took me a lot of time. Sometimes we have a lot of pressure from outside us, and we have to fight for that, and we have to fight for the things that we really are, and the things that really represent us. And it took me time to understand that. The next example that I would like to talk about is Antar de Muertos. This is a piece that actually, I chose this piece to show you because it's a big piece. And I don't know if the Bio String Quartet already played the second movement of this piece, or it's going to be played. I'm not really sure about the schedule for the festival, but they are going to play the second movement that is called Mi Clan. But this is a big piece and was commissioned by Kronos Quartet. And the inspiration of this piece is about the Day of the Dead in Mexico. I wrote this piece in 97 when I met David Harrington, the first violin player of the Kronos Quartet, 2 years before I started writing this piece. And he came to Mexico City. First, he went to a festival, a very important festival in Mexico that is called Cervantino, and I had a piece played there. And David attended that concert, and he liked my music. So a few months later, he sent me a fax. That was the time of the fax machine and everything. So I received a fax from Kronos saying that, you know, David Harrington was traveling to Mexico City and he wanted me to meet him. So we met in Mexico City. I remember that we have our first conversation in front of the cathedral in downtown in Mexico. And, you know, he lost his child, and he was totally devastated because, you know, it was very recent that he lost his child. He was 14 years old and he died suddenly. I think he had a heart attack or something really, really, really terrible. And he was completely obsessed about the concept of death in different cultures. And of course, in Mexico, and how Mexicans deal with death. And of course, he had heard about the Day of the Dead, or the tradition of the Day of the Dead in Mexico. And so he asked me, I would like you to write a piece for us and to be inspired in the Day of the Dead. So I wrote this piece, Antar de Muertos. It's a big, big piece because also he asked me, I need a piece that could be played as the second half, the whole second half of a concert. And I want to represent, you know, the Day of the Dead theatrically, not only the music, you know, I want to represent that on stage. So it was quite a challenge for me. And so this is a picture of Kronos playing for the first time, the world premiere of Altar de Muertos. And what we did is try to learn a friend and to build an altar on stage in which the music and the musicians represent the ofrenda. And so we, you know, have some candles and some, you know, this tapestry that it's very common on the Day of the Dead. So the piece is divided in 4 movements. The first movement is called ofrenda, the offering, in which each player plays a solo, and it's a very personal offering to their dead relatives. Then Mictlán is the name of the place of dead in the Aztec culture. It's in Nahuatl, Mictlán. So this is the second movement of the piece, and for that movement, each player needs to attach some rattles in their ankles. So every time the player sees an accent on the score, they have to tap with your feet. So it's very difficult in terms of coordination because there are a lot of metric changes all the time, and then you have to figure out when to tap and the accents. So it's a kind of it's very challenging to play Mictlán. Then Danza Macabra is the influence of the Europeans when they came to Mexico. The concept of death for Mexican people, in especially the Aztecs, and was a cycle. They always thought about death in terms of a cycle, a whole cycle in which birth represents death and death represents rebirth. No, it's a whole cycle. But this concept of something more static came from Europe. You know, for European people, the concept of death is totally different. So you can go to heaven if you did it right, but if you did it wrong, you can go to hell, and it's much more static. So for the Mexicans, that was something completely different, and that we inherited that from the Spanish. And then the fourth movement is called La Calaca, and this is the one that I want to play for you. And it's what happens nowadays. No, it's the syncretism of the concept of death in the modern Mexico, the chaos and the richness of the multiple symbols. you know, where the duality of life is always present, sacred and profane, good and evil, night and day, joy and sorrow. So I want to play this video for you, so just to give you an example of the full movement of la calaca, and then we keep going.
Gabriela,
Yeah.
for the sound, can you just double check that you're sharing the sound from your computer and not your speakers? Because I'm not sure with the last one if we were getting it directly from the computer or from the speakers.
It says you're sharing sound.
Okay, great. That should be fine then. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and from the beginning, I was making sure that it was, you know, clicking the share sound. So. So it's not complete, the video, because we have to, I want to show you other things, and we don't have so much time, but if you want to hear the whole piece, you can watch this video in my YouTube channel, or you can put La Calaca, Latin American String Quartet, and you will find it. It's on YouTube, and you can watch it later. You know, you can watch it the end of the whole video. For Mi Clan, which is the piece that, you know, the PS String Quartet is going to play, or I don't know if they have already played this piece in a concert. This is what I was telling you about, you know, this kind of a cycle, and how, you know, the Pre-Hispanic culture conceived it as a cycle and in constant movement. So what I try to recreate, especially in this movement, it's, well, you will hear the video as well. It's just a fragment, just an excerpt. But what I try to recreate, it's a very obsessive music, you know, with these rattles, very rhythmic. It's very complex. It's very difficult to read, very challenging for the performance. And that was my idea, you know, that you have this obsessive pulse that is always there, in which you don't have the feeling of the beginning or the end. So it's everywhere. Da, 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 da. So I'm going to play it for you. Just the last example is just a fragment. So this is a fragment of the second movement of Mictlán. So I'm gonna keep talking about myself. So it wasn't when I finished my PhD that I finally understood that my experience did not come from a pure musical tradition. And this is a clear example of Altar de Muertos. And indeed, I benefit from solid Western European academic training, but my sonic musical world surpassed that dominant reference. This is important for me because as I was, talking to you, when I came back, and this is something that I want to talk about it, is after being in England and after, spending, 5 years living in London and doing my PhD there, I came back to Mexico. And as you know, guys, I spent 5 years from 1990 to 1996 in England. And at that time, Mexico signed the free trade with US and Canada. And when I came back to Mexico City, I couldn't even recognize Mexico City. Mexico City was completely different. It was full of Office Max and Burger Kings and Blockbusters at that time. And so I was feeling like, oh, this looks so US. I mean, this is less Mexican. It's much more American. And then I visited my brother. My brother is a visual artist and he lives in California and he's a full-time professor at UCSD. So he's been living there for more than 25 years. And I went to visit him in Los Angeles. And I was totally shocked because we ate tortilla, tacos, and we went to East LA. And I thought that I was just walking in an any street in Mexico City. And I was totally confused. Well, this is crazy. I mean, Los Angeles looks more Mexican in a way than Mexico City, or Mexico City looks more American or much more LA. And so that conflict is, making me I'm gonna go back to this piece later. Let me just move on a little bit more. And well, you can I can't, but anyway, let's so it was very, very strange, very, very strange feeling. And so all these, conflicts and contradictions start getting an impact in the work. But really, really a very deep impact, and start really reflecting about this kind of postmodern point of view about, this kind of idea of reflecting about border, and start, getting more conscious about, social issues and about why do we have borders, and do we really need them? I mean, we really believe, well, I really believe that all of us share the same land, the same planet. If we don't work together and take care of this planet, I don't know where the future is going to be for us as a humankind. So this shocking thing about, start believing and thinking about borders and makes me reflect a lot of things. So I start writing a lot of pieces, not this one, which is Atlas Pumas, and I'm going to play a little bit for you. But I start really making consciousness about, what is happening between the border between US and Mexico. So I wrote pieces like Rio Bravo, which really reflects one of the very, very, very hard conflicts in Ciudad Juárez and El Paso. And then I wrote an opera, Only the Truth. I will show you later in this presentation. And it was a collaboration with my brother. So I think that since I start reflecting on these, political issues start becoming very important in my music. And for this example, it's just a very simple example, but I want to share a little bit of this because it's very well played. And it's a fun piece that it's called Atlas Pumas, and for violin and marimba. And just, very, very quick, this piece, Atlas Pumas, Atlas, it's a football soccer team. And Pumas is a university football soccer team. So when I got this commission for these musicians, really, really great musicians, Aaron Vitran, he's the second violin player of the Latin American String Quartet, and Ricardo Gallardo is the founder member of Tambuco, it's a percussion group in Mexico City, and he plays the marimba. And Aaron is a total fan of the Atlas, and Ricardo is total fan of Atlas Pumas. So I said, well, let's do it a kind of a music that is going to be very virtuosic and very challenging, and represented this hypothetical football soccer match, and these people playing, and let's see who is the winner. So I'm going to play a little bit of this. So I'm going back. What is happening? Okay. So just a moment. I don't know why I went back. So. So, well, this is the first movement of this piece, Atlas Pumas. If you want to hear the whole piece, you can always go to my, it's on YouTube as well. So you just put Atlas Pumas by Gabriela Ortiz, and I'm sure that you will find it. So I want to keep going. Hey, move on. So this is the part that I was talking about. Now, that a great deal of my work represents a sonorous reflection of certain consequences, both human and quotidian, historic and social, and have been generated by the political artificial creation of borders and territorial divisions, which constitute in and of themselves limitations to the freedom of humankind to act and to be in the broadest philosophical sense. So this is the thing that I was just explaining to you about, the free trade and the shock that I had when I was just, some certain parts of Easter Lake looked like any street in Mexico City, and then Los Angeles was even more Mexican than Mexico City, and so on. So this is a picture of my brother, but this is, the kind of contradiction things that I've been talking about. This is the Mayan dream, San Isidro, California, and it's a supermarket and it's a pyramid. No, this is this clash of cultures, and this kind of postmodern image is what, it makes me think about it in many different ways. This is, for example, another, parking place that it's supposed to be Palenque from Chiapas, but it's in Los Angeles, California. So who can reproduce, a Palenque in LA? It's hilarious. It's just completely crazy. Or this is another supermarket. It's Apocalypsis Maya. This is the entrance of a supermarket. I mean, it's incredible. And, those images for me are totally crazy and totally postmodern. No? And this is something that you could find in Mexican churches. You could see, a religious, like this, thing with a Donald behind, or, the Zapata with the Speedy Gonzalez and all that sort of thing. And so these postmodern images really makes me reflect. This is a picture by my brother. It's part of a series of pictures. It's my daughter, and that represents, it's a playing game with, the Velázquez Las Meninas, this, famous picture that it's in El Prado, in the museum of Velázquez, and so it's a kind of thing. And this is the day of the three magic kings in Mexico City. And if you see, we have the Spanish, tradition, but on the other hand, if you look carefully, there is, Daisy, and there are some cartoons, and so it's totally crazy. This is what I'm talking about. This kind of postmodern thing that, that is Euro mixing with, Disney, with Mexican tradition, with the magic, the Three Kings, and so it's totally hilarious, and obviously that has an impact in my work. So because now it's more multicultural, and globalization and migration, and all these issues have been an impact in the way I'm writing right now. So this is part of a project, big project that I did. It took me like 10 years to do it. It's my first opera, and it was a collaboration with my brother. And I want to play a video about this collaboration. Well, I think that everything is explained on the video. Sorry to stop there, but what you're seeing is something that my brother and I, we shoot. And this is a border patrol, and you see in the other side, in the Mexican side, it's an immigrant that is trying to cross the border. This is real.
Gabrielas is this mythical character that became very famous by this corrido singing by los Tigres del Norte, Contrabando y Traición, Smuggling and Betrayal. We traveled to Ciudad Juárez in order to film fragments of what would later be the operant stage video. As a result of this trip, my perception of the border was changed completely, and this exercised as a decisive influence of imagining the appropriate musical caterer for this mythical character. It is important to state that if the nature and virtue of this project stems from its natural conception and hybridization of diverse artistic languages and resources, the music develops as well along these same lines, resulting in one of the most eclectic and fascinating endeavors that I have ever embarked upon.
En Ciudad Juárez, donde una mujer llamará.
Two fundamental aims regarding the musical construction of the opera. On one hand, the aim to recreate a music which expressed the strong syncretism of border popular culture, but always from a contemporary and original perspective and defining a kind of norteño musical cabaret. On the other, the use of electroacoustic resources to build sonic archetypes, such as processed train sounds or the sonic manipulation of the corrido Contrabando y Traición, which on several occasions works as a platform for creating soundscapes that transform and rebuild our perception of reality and fundamentally support the opera's dramatic discourse.
Siempre cuando te encuentre en cualquier parte del mundo, porque así soy, es muy interesante de la mujer Now they are all just movie-like el estribillo, la florita está al vecino, el clásico, los vecinos, el niño canija de fuego, Me permite preguntarle cuál es la verdad en el caso de Emilio Gabrielas. Muy sencilla, salieron de San Isidro, procedentes de Tijuana, traían las llantas del carro repletas de hierba mala, eran de Lidia Buena y Camelia la tejana.
So when this opera was performed in Mexico, it was a lot of controversial, and finally it's forbidden. I mean, it got forbidden in Bellas Artes, and Bellas Artes decided that they don't want to do it an opera like that because my opera deals with well, they say that we are encouraging violence by making this opera. And obviously, well, it's very delicate because of the drug war and this really painful situation that we're still living in Mexico. And so I don't know when I'm going to see this opera again on stage, because it was very controversial. I'm very pleased and very grateful that Long Beach Opera decided to do it in LA 3 years later after the first performance in Mexico City. But I wanted to show you that when that this is another part. This is a collaboration that I did with my brother that I don't regret, although it has been very hard to produce. It took me 10 years. At the beginning, it was very hard. I had this idea and nobody believed on the idea. But then I won the Guggenheim. I applied for the Guggenheim Fellowship and I won the Guggenheim. And so I went with my brother and we shoot in Ciudad Juarez and we got these first images. But because of that, and because of the nature, because of the theme, because of the music that is totally crazy and it's kind of a cabaret kind of music, everybody thought that I was completely crazy, that why I was doing this and why I was working on this, and we didn't have a libretto. It was a recompilation of fragments of news, and so it was very, very, very hard. But what I can tell you is that if you really believe in what you're doing, finally you will get it, and you will find a way to do it. And I'm very grateful that I did it. And I'm very grateful with US because I did it with money, not with Mexican money. Most of the money came from US. So I'm very grateful that I got the scholarship, and then the Indiana University took the project. So the first steps, I did it with the Latin American Music Center at Indiana University. I did a sabbatical there. So we did the first production. It was a student production, but it was very helpful because I tried and I did a lot of experimentation. And because of that video, I came back to Mexico and I showed it to a very interesting director, Jose Arian. And he was the one that actually directed the opera here in Mexico, and he believed in my work and he fight for it. And finally, we did it under a lot of pressure. I mean, we thought that they were going to cancel the opera, and finally it didn't. but I received a message, very clear message after a month that, you know, this opera was performed, that it will never happen in Bellas Artes. I mean, it was the opera company of Bellas Artes that did my opera, but we did it in a small theater because they were remodeling the Bellas Artes at that time. So when I spoke to the people there and I said, I want to, you know, if we can do it in a big theater in Bellas Artes, they said, no way. No way, this opera is very controversial, very politically strong, and there's no way that you can produce the opera. So this is it. But I don't regret that I did this. And so I don't know if you have questions so far, because I know that there's a lot of information right now, and you have different perspectives of my music. So, or I keep going. Well, so I'm gonna move. I'm gonna move something that talks about technique, how technique is very important as a composer, and I want to talk about this Estudios entre Preludios. This is a series of pieces for piano. Piano is my instrument, by the way. So at some point, I was always very afraid to write for my own instrument, and because we have such an incredible repertoire for piano. But I decided to start, you know, playing with that and to do something, and because I had in mind some, you know, polyrhythmic ideas, and so I decided I need to do something for the piano, and I need to try to experiment about these polyrhythmic ideas that I have in my head, and so I start doing this project that is called Estudios entre Preludios. It's an open project, so every time I have a tiny time to write a piano etude, I'll do it, no, between pieces, big projects, or you know, always I make some room to write for this project. So it's a combination of etudes and preludes, and the idea is that you can play one prelude and then the etude and the second prelude and the etude, and this is the idea of growing to grow this compilation of a series of preludes and etudes. So I'm going to play for you the first etude, that is Homage to Ligeti. And I want to show you this process. I want to be more academic in this case, because normally I'm very talk about, you know, other extra musical ideas, but sometimes, yeah, you have something in mind that you really want to do it in terms of musical thing, and in terms and this is a very clear example. So this is what I decided is to play with a fundamental melodic motif of 3 notes, and this motif is accompanied by major chords. I don't know, I have this incredible attraction to major chords. I don't know why, don't ask me why, but I love major chords more than minor chords. So this motif, every time I add a new note, every time this motif is repeated until it reaches 12 notes, and always, you know, but this accompanied by these major chords. And when it reaches 12 notes, the process is then repeated in the left hand. You will see the score right now, and it's going to be very clear. And after the process is complete, the motifs appear in both hands. But the tricky thing is that when the left hand it starts about later. So the resulting in the irregularity and the phrasing is very difficult for the performer, no? Because you can create a polyrhythmic to generate very complex textures, and it gets a lot of virtuosity for the pianist, because it's like you have to divide your mind in one hand and then the other, and do this irregular, you know, phrasing thing. So this is the score. No, if you see, you know, there are, you know, the 3 motifs, and then 4 notes, and then 5 notes. So every time I'm adding a note until I get, you know, the 12 notes. And then in the bottom of this page, you will see that now the process is inverted, and the motifs, the melodic motifs, are in the left hand and the chords on the right hand. see? And then finally, in the molto brillante, you will see the same thing combining both processes, no? The major chords, the motifs with each adding notes, but starting in different in a bar later. So the complexity becomes really, really hard. So I don't know. I don't have the audio for the first etude. I think it's later of this, but I'm going to play. This is the third etude, and this is a brilliant pianist that is playing by memory, and I was really completely shocked about it. He's just playing the third etude, and you will hear it because it's really incredible, and you will hear also it's very rhythmic. It has a lot of repetitions, but it's always very regular. And I think the audio of the first etude, I think, is after this. I hope so. I don't know, but I'm going to play this one. So this is the third etude, and this is a prelude. Sorry. So you're going to hear the prelude and the first etude that I was talking before. So what you heard is, you know, the first two that I was just talking to you, that the first is the motive on the right hand, and then on the left hand, and then both hands together in you know, one bar later. So it's very difficult. It's very short, but it's very difficult to play it. So not all the pianist wants to play it, because it takes a lot of hours for, you know, to get it right, and then the music it only like is like 2 minutes of, you know, hell, and very, very difficult. But anyway, well, so that this is, so what you heard is the first prelude and the first etude, and then you heard the third etude of this collection of pieces. So now it's just a few thoughts about, you know, my way of composing. Among composers, there is a conscious stating that subconscious inspiration or instinct becomes necessary part of the creative process and an infallible guide to making decisions when composing. To me, inspiration and passion are the fuel that nourish our imaginations and produce ideas, while curiosity is the vehicle that gives form and content to our work. I want to play, this is also a very, very, very short example of this piece. And it's for soprano, mezzo, and cello and flute. It's very, very short. But I want to play it because it really gives you a totally different side of my music. I mean, you heard thousands of rhythmic ideas and very strong and very virtuoso, and this is exactly the opposite. This is a piece that I dedicated to my teacher, Mario Lavista. Mario Lavista also studied with Carlos Chavez, so I had the tradition that it's coming from Carlos Chavez and then Mario Lavista, and then I studied with Mario Lavista at the Mexican Conservatory, and I think that he's a really wonderful composer. And so it was his 70th anniversary, so I wrote this piece and dedicate this piece to him. And these are 3 haikus by this wonderful Mexican poet, Maria Baranda, and we are going to hear the first one. These etudes are for flute, for Alejandro Square, who's my husband. And so the first haiku is for bass flute, the second haiku is for G flute, and the third haiku is for C flute. And for mezzo and the cello only serves as a playing this pedal. It's a 5th pedal chord all the time, in which the flute and the voice sings. Bye. we're gonna go back to this, but I'm so sorry. Oh, I don't want to play it again. Well, okay. So I'm sorry. Well, you can hear this, and it's on YouTube, and gives you an idea. What I wanted to show you is that I have another different side of not everything could be so rhythmic, and sometimes you want to just to do something really beautiful and with really beautiful melodic lines, and to really play with the expressiveness of the flute and the voice, and just to play with that. So this is a different example. I don't know if we have time now. I'm coming to the orchestral part of, but the thing is that Ominon is a big piece, and I don't know if I have time to play the whole piece. So we have an option to play these, or I can play some excerpts about the recent pieces that I composed for the LA field. But there are some very, very short excerpts. If you just want to hear them, I don't know. What time is it?
We have about 15 minutes left. So yeah, and there's also a lot of comments in the chat, not really questions, more just like supportive comments in the chat. I just wanted to let you know about that in case you hadn't seen them.
No, I just opened the chat, and because of that I stopped the video. I'm so sorry. And I was just reading a comment by the last comment, and it's saying hello to Alejandro. So I didn't read it. I haven't read the comments. So I don't know if you want to ask questions and maybe just talk about some questions, because I know that you've got a lot of information, and I think it's a good moment. I mean, if you really would like to ask me about some questions rather than start playing orchestral examples, because there are big pieces and big durations, and so I mean, I'm totally open to if you have some questions about what you have heard, or anything. Yeah.
Go ahead, Chase.
Hi, it's a pleasure and an honor. Thank you for sharing all of your work, and not only just your work, but your philosophy and your ideals. I'm actually in San Diego, and I grew up in Southern California, and one of my best friends, his whole family had come over illegally, and it never seemed like a big deal to me because I was used to it. So I just appreciate that perspective, sharing the perspective. It's really important. And it's a difficult thing, I think, to explain, and you did a really wonderful job. Aside from all that, I wanted to ask about if you by chance have any improvisatory experience growing up yourself that you draw from when you compose.
Yes. Well, since I'm a pianist, normally, I mean, it's very difficult to describe how I compose music, because each piece has a different story, and each piece has a different point of inspiration, or a different point of departure. But in many cases, I really play in the piano, and I really improvise. And if I get a good idea, then I start thinking about it, and then I put it on paper, and then start reflecting what can I do with that idea, but yeah, in many cases, my ideas come from my improvisation and by playing the piano. Recently, I moved in a different direction, because since I finally decided to learn Sibelius, it took me quite a long time. So I was just really writing by hand, and then having a student or someone to help me to put it on Sibelius or Finale, and I didn't have the whole control, and then it was very, very, very difficult, especially when you come with a big piece for an orchestra, always mistakes, and So finally, I decided, no, I need to do this myself. So I need to work with the program. So I learned to use Sibelius, and for some reason, now I'm very, very far from the piano. It's been like 4 or 5 years that I hardly use the piano. I mean, I use the piano, but not as before. So I don't know. I've been developing my inner ear in a different direction, and normally I work just in front of the computer, and I start, putting everything on the computer and work with that, and so it's different. But it depends. Normally, when I really want to produce very, very good melody, I use the piano. I think it's important, or I sing. Maybe you can think that I'm totally crazy, but singing is very important. Something that has to become physical. I mean, especially if I'm writing a voice part, I have to sing it. Well, I mean, I know that I'm not a good singer, but I have to feel it. I have to feel the material. If I don't feel the material, I'm not going anywhere. And this is a way to feel it. Or if I'm writing a flute melody or a flute concerto, I have to sing it, because flute it's very close to the voice, and it's close to to that. So, and for the phrasing and everything, I have to feel it. Recently, I just wrote a piano concerto for the Orchestra Bretagne Orchestra in France, and all the piano part, I played it on piano and improvised and played with that, and I was in my instrument. Because also you need to know that it's playable. So, and because I'm a pianist, so I was just really playing and working on that. So it depends on the project, but yeah, there's a lot of improvisation. Even when I wrote for percussion, and I have a lot of pieces for percussion. That's another side of my catalog. I wrote lots of percussion concertos. I wrote a percussion quartets. A lot of percussion music, and percussion is also something that I understand very well, and I like to work for percussion, and when I work for percussion, I tried even to play it, or to play the rhythms and to tap in the table and on my desk, and but yeah, I have to feel what I'm working with, and physically is very important. Sometimes it's we think that everything is rational, and no, music it's also magic, and you cannot rationalize everything. I mean, something has to come from your guts and from your heart, and to feel it physically, and for me it's very important, very, very important. So I don't know if someone else have questions.
I think Ben has a question.
Yeah, thank you for sharing this music. I mean, each one has touched me in different ways and engaged me in ways that few music, I think, has in the past. So each piece has so much excitement. I really enjoy them. It's a funny story. I do have a question, but the first piece or the second piece with the Day of the Dead with the string quartet, I actually know that quartet really well, Quarteto Latinoamericano. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, but because the first violinist, Saul, is actually a personal friend of mine.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually found his vaccine and everything. But I was just wondering, I really like that quartet, both the piece and the performers. What was it like working with them? Because they were really a really big deal.
They are incredible, and something that is very important for Quarteto Latinoamericano is all the work that they have done for Latin America. I mean, they really expand the repertoire for the Latin American string quartets, and they've been commissioning thousands of works from Latin America, and they have done something very important, very, very important. So I really appreciate the work that they are doing, because they have been a really, really important promoters for Latin American music, and this is extremely important. This is something that I have been reflecting right now, and everything the more I think, the more I believe that as a Latin American musician, we need to think, we need to stand that, and we need to Europe has been dominating the future of music for so many years. I'm so tired about that. They are the ones that they decided, what is best. They are the ones to decide if we're going to move to the spectralism, we're going to move to this, we're going to do this, and on the most important festivals. And if you don't belong to that, you're doing ethnic music, you're doing folk, or they start doing these categories that it really makes me really mad. And finally, we have to tell them, you have to look that there is another continent, and there is another way to think about music. It's not only Europe. I really respect Europe, but it's not the only way. And it's not only the only path. There are other ways to do things. And so for me, the work of the Quarteto Latin American it's been very important, because it's a quartet that, rather than playing Brahms and Beethoven, which actually they play Beethoven, but it's not the only thing that they are doing. They've been focusing in playing and promote Latin American composers. From, they were the first ones to record the whole catalog of Carlos Chavez. They were the first ones to record all the quartets by Villalobos. They were the first ones to record Revueltas. This is a very important work. And this is important to me. So I'm glad that you make this comment, because it's important to stand up that, these composers, they are hardly known in Europe. I mean, if you ask in Europe, who is Revueltas, and sometimes they are considered minor composers. Oh yeah, they are good, but they are minor composers, second league, no? Villalobos or Ginastera or Chavez or Revueltas or Pons, second league. And I'm just tired about that. We need to move. We need to be more diverse and more inclusive, and we have to stand up to move into a different direction. This is the way I think.
I would give that a round of applause if I could. That was really beautiful.
Yeah. So and sometimes it's hard. I mean, sometimes we have as a student, you have a lot of pressures, because at some point you want to belong to this kind of music, and you want to belong to this, kind of aesthetic. Oh. Oops. Hello?
Hello.
I don't know. Something happened. It's almost, we are on to the end of the talk. But it's something that well, what I'm saying is that it's important. It's important, at least to me as a Mexican composer, to defend who I am, and the things that matter to me and are important. And we learn all these European composers. If you ask, all my students know who is Penderecki, who is Ligeti. But the other way around, it doesn't happen. I remember that once that there was this Polish composer that came to my class, and I asked him, do you know any Mexican composer? And he couldn't answer. He couldn't mention anyone. And I said, well, ask my students about Polish composers. They could talk about Gorewski, they could talk about Lutosławski, they could mention lots of them. So this has to be changed. I mean, we'll learn about Europe, but Europe is, why they don't care about us. So we need to move on in a different direction. That's my feeling. I don't know if you have any more questions or basically, I don't know.
I think Ethan has a question.
Yes, hello. Yeah, this goes back to your opera, which gained a lot of controversy in your past, and I wanted to know, what would you advise a young composer who wants to tackle a very heavy, very controversial subject that may get a lot of backlash?
Well, I think that if you have to be secure about what you're doing, and you really have to fight for that. I remember that I was in a panel when, this controversy about my opera, and it was a panel, I don't know, I ended up in this panel with a lot of, political leaders from the right parties, no? And some of them, they were attacking me because they said to me that my opera was inciting violence instead of fighting against violence. And I said, no, the reason of violence is not my opera. The reason of violence is much more complex in this country. The reason of violence is because, because we have a drug war. It's a very complex relation between Mexico and US because all the arms are coming from US. It's not from Mexico. But on the other, and the consumers, the drugs consumers are in US, not in Mexico. Mexico produces the drugs. And this is it's a problem that goes beyond Mexico. It's very complex, and the violence also is coming because unfortunately Mexico is a country about contrast, and a lot of poor people, that if you're really poor, and this is what happens, and a drug cartel came to you and said, well, you're going to do this job, and I'm going to give you lots of, I don't know, $1,000. You will do it because you don't have any future for you, because you are so poor and you don't have anything to eat that you immediately ended up, working for these cartels. So, I mean, violence is there, but my opera is not responsible for producing violence. You know what I mean? So I have to answer that. So you have to defend your ideas. You have to stand up and be very strong about why you're doing this, and why it's important to you, and why it's important for the others, and be very sure that this is what you want to do. Just imagine, when the Rite of the Spring was performed in 1913, and it was, a total disaster for Stravinsky and the Aguilera. But I don't think that Stravinsky decided, I'm going to get rid of the Rite of the Spring because it's a whole disaster, and this world premiere was a disaster. And the police came into the premiere, and people were shouting, and it was a whole scandal. And I don't think that Stravinsky decided to give up and said, oh, I'm going to destroy this piece because people didn't like it. Just imagine if that would have happened. We didn't have the Rite of the Spring, which for me is one of the masterpiece of the 20th century orchestral music. So you have to really defend your work, and you have to be very sure about that.
Thank you.
Well, I don't know if we have another question, and if not, I guess we're finished. I don't know. Elizabeth, do we have more questions or something?
Could you, Gabriela, this has been so awesome, but since you didn't get to share the orchestral stuff, and of course I know your work, and I've been fortunate to hear your orchestral work live, including at New World. But maybe you could share something in the chat or send something to Treya or Elizabeth that they could send to students, a couple of places they can look at your orchestral pieces, and maybe even a score if you're comfortable sharing that.
Absolutely. I mean, I can send it to Elizabeth. I think that some information you could get it on YouTube and in my webpage. So there are some video clips. As you know, with the LA Phil, it's very difficult to share a complete video because of the rights of the musicians and everything. You cannot put a complete video there. So I was going actually to share the Omnium performance with the New World Symphony that has a specific password, but they gave it to me just for this
Oh,
nation, and it's very well. I mean, the film
yeah.
is incredible, and I was going to share that, but it lasts 20 minutes, so I don't
Well,
know.
can you, is it something that you could share with the conference people? Well, you'd have to share the password though, so.
I have to share the password, and I don't know. You guys know more than me because this is very tricky. In Mexico, you can share everything, and the orchestras don't ask for permissions and everything. It's more hilarious here, but in US, I don't get to get in any trouble. So I don't know. Or maybe no, it's just 5 minutes. I can play it for you 5 minutes, and just to give you a short idea. But I don't know if that's meaningful. Because we still have 5 minutes, but I don't know. I can give it to you the password, but please don't share it outside because they're gonna kill me. Or I don't know if this is.
Hold on, don't share it here because we're live streaming. But if you want to,
No, it's very tricky.
if you want to, just or put it in the chat maybe or something. But I wouldn't say.
No, I wouldn't put it in the chat. Why don't you guys communicate and figure out what would be best?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, yeah, because I mean it's a complete video and it's so well done. I mean, definitely so well done.
I was there. It was amazing.
Yes, and the quality is just incredible. And Carlos Miguel did a very incredible work, and the guys played incredible, and it's so professional and so incredible. But yeah, it has a password. It has it's a private Vimeo video with a very high quality.
Well, the thing that I love about Gabriela's orchestral music is that it's just like her chamber music. There's the driving groove, pulse oriented, with beautiful melodies, but now the full palette. So imagine all the colors that she can get from a string quartet or a chamber ensemble, but now the entire orchestra. So definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, well, you can get a few excerpts of my music in YouTube, and that will give you an idea. Of course, there are some excerpts, especially when with LA feel. But I think there are some performances with Mexican orchestras, more that you could hear complete versions, because Mexico, it's more relaxed into that sense. So it's a question that I can give you some links, or if you guys are interested, just go to my webpage or my YouTube channel, and I think that you can get some of these examples. Yeah, the orchestral part is also very important in my career, because this is what I have been doing for the last 5 years, really writing a lot of pieces for orchestra. But it's the thing is that the durations are longer than chamber music pieces mostly, so that's why I choose some more chamber music in this case, so to give you more a wide idea of who I am, and
Thank you so much for sharing everything. This has been a really great presentation.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for this invitation, and please find if you need anything else from me, I always can share it with you, or you can contact Elizabeth, and Elizabeth can contact me, or Lansing, or I'm totally open if you need it.
Hey, I have an idea. Gabriela, you have an office hour, correct?
Yes, I have an office hour.
So maybe you could share one of the orchestral pieces during an office hour, sort of as an extension. Then people who want to show up could be there. I think that's, I don't know, Elizabeth, how does that sound?
She can, yeah, you guys can do whatever you want. That's your office hour, and that's at 6. So that's in like 2 hours. I mean, sorry, a little less than 3 hours from now, 6:30 p.m.
Just a thought.
I think it's a great idea. I mean, if you guys want to hear that piece, I can play the whole piece together, and we can show the score as well, and definitely you can look at the score first. I don't know how to do it at the same time, but if someone can explain it to me, because it's a video, and the audio, it's a video. Oh, I have an audio and the score. I don't know what you prefer. If you want to see the score and the audio, or you want to watch the video. I have two options. We can discuss that, and we can do that.
Sure.
I have an audio that has been recorded by the Scottish orchestra with Carlos Miguel. It's a professional recording. It hasn't been out in a CD yet, but it's a professional recording. We did a professional recording for 1 minute. So it's very well played and the sound is very good. Or if you really want to watch the video and see, Carlos Miguel conducting and the guys playing, it's up to you guys. I mean, we have two options, and I can share, of course, the score with you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Gabriela. This was very intriguing. Thank you so much for everything you shared and your beautiful music and everything. We are grateful that you are here with us at the Charlotte New Music Festival. So, if you want to catch her in our office hour, I'm going to stop